Hi, and welcome back to Pushbox Banter. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Craig, and we have some wonderful things to talk about today about the F1 world and the Hungarian Grand Prix, or the Hungaroring.
Hungaroring.
I always mispronounce that thing. But that's okay because pronunciation on that does not matter on who wins the race. It doesn't really have a bearing because McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, they're all in the fight for it today. So we've got some cool stuff to talk about, cool race things to talk about, a little bit of, there wasn't a whole lot of, there's like a little bit of silly season stuff going on. Not a ton, but a little bit. So we've got all those things, and so it should be pretty interesting today.
Yeah.
I think.
It's a good time.
Very good time, Daniel. So with that, let's start a little bit of silly season.
Yeah, sure. Let's go for it.
Let's go for that. So, so this week, Haas has a little bit of information going on. So we've got, obviously Behrman's already been signed for next year, but then Kevin Magnussen, he announced that he wouldn't be driving with them next year. Haas has stated that they'd like to have him back with the team in some sort of capacity. I think Kevin still wants to try to find a position where he can drive. So we'll see. Maybe he's going to end up working back in there in the garage or in the paddock for them. I don't know.
Yeah,
but that's kind of official. He and Haas have announced it.
Yep.
So yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I don't think he probably has another ride in him.
I
don't think so either.
I don't think so. I don't think he does.
Yeah, so we might see him in the garage in some sort of like ambassador capacity or something. Like he's a good character, and it's going to be kind of sad to see him leave because he did bring a lot of like drama to the races and things like that. So
yeah. Well, and then it's rumored that Ocon is going to be taking that other position, but they haven't announced anything yet, so nothing signed or sealed, delivered at this point. But I mean, you're taking a guy that's kind of, in my mind, just from the surface level looking at it, you've got a brand new person coming into F1, and then you've got a guy that, if you take Ocon, you've got a guy that with a reputation for not being a good teammate.
Oh yeah, that's
so
right.
Why are you going to go that route?
Yeah, I would not go the Ocon route.
Where there's where there's smoke, there's fire. So why would you go that route? I would feel better with keeping Magnussen or going a totally different route. There's a couple other riders out there that you could go after as well. Bottas being one of them. I don't know if he'd go that route, but he's most likely going to be looking for a ride this next year. So he's rumored still at Williams. That may be something closer. I don't know if Val's is going to say, hey, let's pause for a little bit and go ahead and sign somebody, or if we want to wait on signs.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Yeah, I think Bottas is going to have a drive, so I'm sure we're going to see him probably at Williams. You're right, Ocon, I wouldn't have him at Haas, knowing that he's been a terrible teammate to like all his previous team mates. So I don't know how he would react with all the attention that Ollie Behrman would probably be getting at that team.
Yeah. Is Ollie Behrman going to be the number one? Is it a clear number one, number two situation?
Right.
Kind of how does that all play out? Ocon is a pretty stylish guy too. Like when he arrives at the paddock, or arrived this weekend at one of the times, he had this very stylish outfit, loose pants. With hip pockets that you could probably fit your laptop in, or your iPad, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Huge, yeah. But so I mean, is his personality going to be able to take care of that, and foster a good relationship, good working relationship there? I don't know.
We shall see.
Who knows? I mean, Haas has always had a little bit of friction here and there, but I mean, I know, Hulkenberg, Magnussen, they get along pretty good now, but
yeah, I mean, they've always had a lot of experience in that team, except for the time they had the Schumacher Mazepin situation. But when it was Magnussen and Grosjean and Magnussen and Hulkenberg, they've always had experience. So now it's going to be interesting. I think Ocon, obviously, he's got something to bring, but just as much negative will come with him, I think. So we'll see.
Yeah. So we've got that. Like I said, Bottas going to Williams. So,
more than likely.
More than likely, yeah. I don't know if he's going to end up there, but I just don't see signs going that direction. I think but
what is Sainz waiting for?
who knows? I think
It's
maybe
strange.
He's waiting for the moon to move backwards in the sky. Maybe.
Yeah,
I'm not really sure.
I don't know either.
You know, he's commented that he's very focused on the race at hand, and so he doesn't want to detract from his race preparation and so forth, and that's great. But yeah. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on with that, and so he's commented that he's just going to wait until later in the season or at another time. I don't know if it'll end up being something after the summer break. There was a point, I think Netflix actually had a bunch of extra cameramen show up, I think on the Australian Grand Prix prior to it, because there were rumors. There were rumors at the time that that he was going to sign with Williams. And then that was right around the same time, whichever race this was. It was right around the same time that Alpine, got their guy Bettitori.
Right, exactly.
And and then the rumors started going with him going to Alpine. So I don't know. Like right now, he's got options there.
Yeah.
There's still open options. There's open options with Mercedes, but Mercedes was a possibility. Toto doesn't want to wait. He's going to wait until it's time, right time for him. So he doesn't want Sainz to wait on him, which is like
he's saying that, but I think they're both waiting on each other.
Maybe it's a match made in heaven. Maybe.
I think so. I think so. Out of all the teams that are left, I think I'd go with Mercedes.
If
they're
I was
looking
Sainz,
good,
heck yeah,
right?
They're looking great, and. That would be. I mean, he would fit right in on that. Now, Kimi, he was in the pits today in the race, standing next to Toto. So he's still learning, he's still growing.
It's encouraging for him.
Yeah. So that's what a lot of people think is that he's going to go ahead and go that direction. But having Sainz there one more year may be a good thing.
Yeah.
Kimi hasn't had he's had an okay season in F2, but not like a great season. But that hey. There's more to it than just race wins in that. But
what about Zhou? He's still fighting.
Yeah, it's tough to say with him, and honestly with Bottas. Bottas, it's more like, hey, you've got this history of success behind him outside of his current team. With Zhou, you've got Sauber, and the car is going nowhere. Like all the upgrades, if their car is getting faster, it's not as good as any of the other teams. So they keep moving back in the grid every week.
That's right.
He's not having shunts all the time, so that's good. But he's just not doing that great. He had a good race in China. Outside of that, that was it. Right?
So
like if you're looking for marketing and you're needing something out of China, okay, but.
Yeah, no.
But outside of that, like his performance
enough,
don't merit him coming back this next year. And from what I've seen, but hey,
I think he's out.
Probably so.
There was a point where I was like, oh, maybe he'll pick up a seat or he'll go to Alpine or something.
Yeah, no.
That's what I was thinking, Alpine, but I don't think Alpine's going to want him.
No, I think I agree with you, and I think that what they'll do is like a lot of these teams, they're going to either go with like an experienced, established driver, or they're going to go young and get, because there's a lot of really good young drivers out there.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about our or VCarb?
VCarb, yeah. So you've got Sonoda. There's talk with Liam Lawson. It was kind of funny. They were like talking about Liam Lawson going to RB and asking Yuki if he thought that would be weird. He was like, well, yeah. So, I mean, it is kind of their starter team, right? So, there's.
I mean,
Perez,
the elephant in the room is Ricciardo.
Right.
Are we expecting Ricciardo to stay? What do you think?
I don't know. It's tough to say because you've got like a power struggle internally at Red Bull with Helmut and with Christian Horner, and Helmut likes to come out and tell you, hey, this is this, that, and the other.
Right.
In reality, like, okay, are you making the decisions? If you're not, then we're asking the wrong person or we're listening to the wrong person. As long as Ricardo is doing a good job, he brings in a lot of ad money, and that may have a little bit of bearing there. His days are probably numbered, though. I think that, a few races ago, Perez, he's doing well, gets this 2-year contract, and then everything turns out like when he gets that contract, everybody's thinking, Ricardo's days are really numbered. And then Perez kind of falls off
the face of the earth after Monaco, really, right?
Yeah. So then at that point, there's a new hope for Ricardo. And I don't know if it's real or not, but he seems like there's times where he seems like he's more competitive. But I kind of think he's at the end of the line for him. There might be some teams out there, but I think he's kind of at the end.
Yeah, I think he's done, and I think he's burned all his bridges all over the place. So
yeah,
I don't think there's much there for him, and he doesn't have any airtime either. So like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how much ad revenue or like sponsorship money he's going to bring if he's not making it on TV, right? So that's something to consider.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as Yuki goes, Yuki's already set to stay at VCARB. But like, you're right. He's been he's complaining like, hey, why is Lawson getting tested on the Red Bull? You know, that makes no sense. Like, why am I here otherwise, right?
Yeah.
And considering he's like a Honda driver, you know, what's the status going to be with Yuki in that team altogether? You know. Once they go to, what is it, Aston Martin?
Well, yeah, because they were going to go or stay with Honda, and then recently they're saying that they're going to Aston Martin. So
So
I don't know.
That's interesting. So yeah, lots to unpack, but I think we're all waiting on Sainz. So once we get a little bit more from Sainz,
yes,
I think all the chips are going to fall. And as far as Sergio goes, I think he's going to stay, as much as like Helmut just came out saying, hey, there's going to be a meeting during the summer break. I mean, is there a possibility he won't be in the team, or will be like relegated to the VCARB team and have Yuki come up and drive that Red Bull? I don't know that anybody's going to do as good as he is, even though, let's be fair, he's been really, crapping the bed for the last 7 races. That car is obviously something to drive. It's like on a knife's edge at all times. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. So yes. Yeah. I guess other news that's out there, I don't know if you guys have seen Gasly and his new little puppy dog. It, kind of rates on the cuteness level of Leclerc's. So I don't know if they're going to have a contest or anything there on that. But, and then also I think Leclerc has introduced his little dog to Lewis Hamilton's.
So speaking of, kind of in line with some of the Red Bull stuff, they brought a bunch of upgrades to this race. Yes. What do you think about those?
Well, it's pretty cool. Pun not intended, but it's a lot of these upgrades were for cooling for the engine. so they have all these vents, coming off of their car, and they needed to do some upgrades because they've been falling behind. Everybody's been catching them, or at least they've been, in my opinion, they've been caught, and they've been struggling. And so they needed some upgrades. Definitely.
I think they've been surpassed. So they've been caught and surpassed.
I think so too. I was just going to kind of wait for that later in the show.
Yeah, we'll get there. But
I think so. And so I think it's great that they brought some upgrades, and it was interesting, with Verstappen, he gets all of them. Perez gets a little bit of them, but not any of like the engine cooling type stuff.
Yeah.
So, going into Hungary, it was threatening to be one of the hottest races, at least track temperature races that they've had. So it was threatening to be up in the upper 50s Celsius, by the way. So,
yeah. Well, a little aside, they were talking about the FIA trying to introduce some cooling inside the cockpit.
Oh, really?
For the racing car drivers. And they asked Lewis about it, actually post-race. And he was like, what? I didn't know about this. Why? This makes no sense. We're highly paid athletes. Like, we train for this. We don't need an AC in the car.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is kind of makes sense. Like, I know we're thinking about driver safety and stuff like that, but I mean, there's a reason why only a select few like 20 people can do it,
Right.
in in the whole world.
Well, yeah.
So,
Well, it's kind of interesting too, with that they're asking Lewis Hamilton about that, because like all of the cars have a cooling system.
yeah,
And so it's all like they have air intake valves, usually either at the front of the nose or like right around. It's usually right around the number.
yeah, exactly.
insignia on
Yeah,
there. So they have the option of how many they want or don't want, whatever. And there's been a little bit of controversy with the Mercedes car because theirs by the number is closed. So there's still like this little hump. And so some speculation out there is that they've come out with like this new steering type thing that's helping them out that nobody else has. And that's why they have that little...
There's a possibility. I mean, there's a possibility.
I know. Yeah.
They're notorious for that, specifically with I forgot what their last invention was basically the steering wheel would go up and down, and kind of like camber the wheels or something like that. So I probably said that all wrong, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting that they would ask him about that with the air conditioning.
Yeah, I know.
But then again, like you think about it, like they have these fireproof suits on. So
yeah,
they're insulated. They're not going to get like if you have fans blowing on you. I mean, it's just more like temperature to keep the outside of that suit kind of cool, but you're still going to be burning up on the inside of it. So you got to train for it. I mean, and if you wear like ice packs underneath, okay, those are going to melt. I mean, they're going to be melted in, I would say like 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe soon, maybe a little faster, maybe a little bit slower, depending on the air temperature. But I mean, your body's gonna kind of heat those up pretty quick,
right?
And yeah, it'll feel good for a bit, and then you're gonna be really hot.
So, that's right.
Once again,
right. But back to the Red Bull upgrades, right? Was it an upgrade or was it a downgrade?
Well, it's hard to say. And like when you look at the end results of the day, and you're also talking about like all the other teams are bringing upgrades except for Williams this past weekend. So their upgrade when you look at qualifying. So in qualifying we've got McLaren's getting the top row first, second, and then you've got Verstappen coming in third. Perez, he had a shunt in Q1, so
it's like a little bit of rain came down, and that was it. It's all it took.
Hit a touch of grass and it was gone. But so he qualifies at the very back. Well, so it's hard to say.
Yeah.
Like and he's been qualifying at the back, and hasn't had that great of racing recently. So that was a little challenging to say. But when you look at the rest of qualifying, Verstappen's still right up there, and he came in third in qualifying. Yeah. He wasn't that close time wise to first.
They're lacking pace for sure.
Yeah, and then they had a little bit of rain, and he went ahead and parked it. They still had 2 minutes to go, so he could have gotten in another lap, maybe possibly.
Right.
And but he chose not to at that point, and he got out of the car pretty frustrated, and some of the comments that he had during the race indicate that the car is not there. Yeah, and I think the stats are showing it's not there. It's quick and it's fast, but it's not the quickest or the fastest out there anymore.
Not anymore. It isn't. No.
Yeah, and so McLaren's kind of taking that over. Mercedes is looking really good. Ferrari's kind of on the back step. They did some upgrades. Upgrades didn't work, so they had to back off of those and kind of start down a different path. So
they went back to like a Barcelona spec or something.
Yeah. So they went backwards a little bit. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know with them on what's going on there. But yeah, I would say Red Bull is. It's good that they had the upgrades. When you look at the overall on this race, so Perez, he started 16th.
That's right. Yeah.
And he ended up 8th,
7th.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I didn't mean to short your guy there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so he ends up 7th. So that's really good overtaking, because this track is not known for overtaking. You can, but it's the only one that's worse is Monaco. On overtakes. So it's actually pretty impressive that he was able to do that. Some of that was how they managed. They had him pit early and go. His tire selection was a little different, but hey, he did really well.
Yeah, no,
Was able to move
I
up.
think he was on the hards for quite a bit before they brought him in, and he did pretty good.
Yeah.
He got passed up by Russell at the beginning, but then overtook him or undercut him rather over in the pits and did all right for the most part. A good recovery drive.
Yeah.
But as far as the upgrades go, yeah, Red Bull had stated that they basically, they're feeling the pressure because they fast tracked some of those upgrades.
Oh, really?
And that's part of the reason why only Max had the full upgrade versus Perez that only had part of it, right? He had most of the wing, the floor, the two wings, the floor, and but was missing that like headpiece, right? The engine cover and the side pod. So, yeah, the car looks good. It looks phenomenal.
Yeah, the front wing is like way more pointed.
It's a lot more pointed. The rear wing, I think they did something to the mid beam, and then obviously the wing itself was a lot more aggressive, lots more downforce, but obviously track specific. And yeah, it was it looked like a good looking car. It almost looked like Ferrari in a bit because it kind of scoops in the side pod, kind of making the air go down to the bottom of the back. So it looked good, but it didn't really produce much. And like you said, Max was complaining the whole time. He's basically saying, "Hey, I can't turn the car. The brakes were an issue. They were talking about like -5 something on like brake differential." And then Helmut ended up coming out after the race and said, "Hey, yeah, this it didn't produce what we wanted it to produce, and it was a failure of like the upgrades and then obviously the strategy." And more to come on that. Obviously, we haven't talked about the actual race, but yeah, struggled all through practice. Perez's car looked good in practice. I think practice two or
practice one was really fun he looked like he had a barbecue going. Full barbecue on there, but
practice he was quickest, I think, in the long run. So
Perez was looking really. It was throughout practice he was looking good, and I had some pretty high hopes for him when he came into quali. He was starting to look pretty good. His first, he did get a time in, which obviously wasn't the best time, but it was at the beginning of that qualifying session. Whenever he had, whenever he got the time, and then he had that shunt. But yeah, he was looking good, and it was just, I mean, it wasn't. There were a couple of incidents where Leclerc in practice where he spun out.
Oh, that's right.
And that one was pretty,
that was massive.
Yeah,
actually.
that was pretty massive, and he was really lucky that he didn't have a lot of damage on his car.
Yeah.
And then Yuki, he had one that was later in qualifying, and because both RBs actually made it to Q3,
right,
which is somewhat amazing, but he makes it to Q3, and he's going along, and he loses it, and it's bad. Like he goes airborne, and
that's right.
It was more of what didn't get damaged on the car.
Yeah,
like I think that they had to basically redo this whole car.
That was insane.
Yeah, a lot of insanity with his shot. But he was. I think he used like an older power unit, so he didn't have to use a brand new power unit. It would count. Same thing with, I think with Perez, I want to say. I might be getting that mixed up.
I think Perez's was fairly new. He had changed his engine last race. So.
So,
but Perez out in Q1, that's terrible.
I know. Whenever I saw that, I thought of you.
Yeah,
it was like
Crash Co
somewhere there's a Daniel that's crying right now.
Yeah, no, that
needs comfort.
That was not good, but a good recovery drive. But as far as the race, what were your thoughts?
My thoughts? Oh my gosh. So a lot of thoughts going on because it's weird this race because there's not a lot of overtakes. It's somewhat like kind of lulls you to sleep in some ways, and then all of a sudden somebody passes someone, you're like, what just happened? So there's a little bit of that going on, but you have the traditional excitement at the very beginning, at the very first curve. Most of the overtakes are done within the first couple of curves throughout the whole racetrack. So right from the beginning, you've got both McLarens on the front row, and from my understanding, they've been instructed, hey, don't let Verstappen beat you on the start, and don't wreck on the start, you know? And so they get going, and Verstappen, they get like, Norris gets a decent start, not the greatest start. Piastri's on his right, kind of moving up close to him, but not passing him. His wheels, front wheel, even maybe past his rear wheel. And then Verstappen's trying to pass on the outside. So he's coming up. So Piastri kind of goes wide on this first turn. Basically, like Norris has almost like fully goes off of the road. And then Verstappen totally has to, because he can't make the turn.
Right.
He gets past them like in a straight line, but he's not. It's more like, you know, desperation type.
Right.
And so he goes around, and then he comes back on the track in second place.
Yeah.
And Piastri's in first, and Norris is in third. So Norris, historically, he's had 5 poles. And, you know, he's never finished the first lap within, you know, in first place. So would this lap be any different? At this point, no. So, you know, so immediately he's on the horn going, hey, Verstappen's got to get this place back.
Yeah.
You know, he overtook on outside, blah, 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 right? So Red Bull's talking with Verstappen, telling him to give the place back, and he's, you know, kind of whiny about it.
Oh, totally.
He's bitter.
Whiny. Yeah.
Like normally we're used to seeing a calm, cool, collected Verstappen, and I mean, from the get-go, it didn't seem like he was that way. He didn't want to give up the space, but he did, like, immediately, and let Norris pass. Well, I say immediately. It was on like lap 3.
Yeah, I mean, it was an extra lap.
But basically,
still,
once I think Horner, actually, it may have been Christian Horner, may not have been their voice, his voice, and the
GP.
Yeah, the GP is pretty similar in my ears, but So and, from that point forward, like we've got both McLarens running 1-2.
Over the radio, Max was like, "Okay, so this is." You know, this is how it's going to be. Tell the FIA, you know, tell the FIA when somebody passes you and pushes you off, like that's fine. That's how we're going to race now. Yeah.
I mean,
he was just bitter.
Yeah. It's kind of fun to have, I mean, from a fan standpoint, it's fun to hear Max get a little riled up like that in a way.
It was, it's maybe a little bit too much.
Yes, maybe so. I like pulling for Max Verstappen, but he definitely had some moments that'll probably be on Drive to Survive this next season.
Yeah, for sure.
Out of this race, because as the race goes on, you know, there's a lot of different tire strategies that go into it. You're looking at a 2-stop race because of the heat, because of tire degradation. You got a lot of turns, you know, fast, you know, slow speed corners and so forth. But at that point, like once he gives that space back, you've got, you know, both McLarens up front, then you've got Verstappen, then you've got Hamilton right behind him, and then you've got the Ferraris, and you know,
and he gets undercut. Verstappen gets undercut by Hamilton, and that whole story was pretty interesting. Basically got stuck behind him for like ever.
He couldn't pass him.
Twice.
He couldn't pass him.
2 different times.
Yeah. Like how it was like he would be behind him like for 5 or 10 laps, it seemed like, before he could actually pass.
That really happened. Yeah. It's absolutely crazy.
Which we don't like, you know, we talk about all these races and how many overtakes you can have and so forth. But I mean, that's some pretty good defensive driving there. By Hamilton. It doesn't necessarily get recognized.
And you could hear Max was struggling with the car the whole time. He's like, "Hey, I can't turn." And then, you know, where that second DRS kind of starts, he would always try to go like on the far side, right? And on the outside, and just couldn't deliver. Just could not. And you could tell he just couldn't turn the car.
Yeah, there was one spot where he passed Hamilton. And then on the very next portion of the curve, he couldn't turn the car. And so Hamilton, like, you know, gets on the inside and drives on by.
Yeah, that was interesting for sure.
Yeah. So we had that going on. We had, you know, the Ferraris were trying to do tire strategy to kind of, you know, they went to plan C a little early.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
What do you think about plan C, plan D?
Yeah. I was curious. I wanted to see plan C.
Yeah.
You know, but Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was going to get to see any more.
Again. Yeah, we didn't see anything from from Ferrari at all. Like, they were just in no man's land. Like,
they
okay,
really were. Like, it was they did well, but it's like they weren't quick enough to catch up or put any pressure on Hamilton or the McLarens or really Verstappen. But I mean, they were close to him, but they really weren't able to do anything.
It's like you've got the top three and then Ferrari.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm sure we'll see them again soon. So it's not to be overly concerned about them.
Yeah,
it's going to happen sooner than later. Yeah, they'll just be back.
They get an upgrade or two. They'll be right there. I mean, they're still, like, timing wise, they're really quick.
Yeah,
they're right there with them, but they're just not.
They just don't have the pace. Yeah,
just not quite. Yeah. So I mean, the race was pretty interesting once it started getting into the strategy and once it started getting into the pit stops. Yeah. So the first one, Max stayed out way longer. You had Hamilton pitting first, and then you had the McLarens following. And so Verstappen, like, of course he's on. He's able to kind of catch up. He's able to pass Hamilton at some point. So that's kind of a back and forth battle that you're seeing throughout the race. So, and then we get into the pit stops with the McLarens. Yeah. You wanted to walk us through that, Daniel?
Yeah, the McLarens and their pit strategy was a little interesting on, going into like the 40, like lap 40 something.
Yeah, it was like 46.
Exactly. Yeah. So later in one of those laps, you have Piastri up front leading the race. Then you have Norris, Hamilton behind Norris, a couple seconds back, and then Verstappen. And again, Verstappen stuck behind Hamilton, that's kind of struggling with his tires because he had pitted way too early after his first stint. And then they're thinking, okay, Hamilton's going to have to pit earlier than normal because he had pitted early on his first stint. And so the McLarens, to cover the undercut from the Mercedes from Hamilton, they pit Norris first. Okay, so this is the start of the problem.
Yeah,
right. They pit him. He comes out. Piastri then is on older tires and is basically losing out, kind of being undercut himself by Norris. So they leave him out for 2 laps, and by the time he comes out, guess where? Right behind Norris. And on his out lap, he kind of hits the gravel and possibly damages his car. We don't know exactly, but he's kind of struggling to keep up with Norris. And on the team radio, they tell Norris, "Hey, we need to correct the places. So you need to give the position back." In few words, right? And Norris kind of just disregards it. Like, why? Why do I have to do that? Not knowing kind of the full picture that, hey, they put him in the position where this was going to happen, and kind of put both drivers in a position where they're like, one, Piastri, why would you undercut me for my teammate, giving him priority? And then on Lando's side, hey, why are you telling me to give up this position? Like, this is what I'm here to do. I'm here to win. And we can count maybe 20 laps.
Yeah, so they originally are telling him on lap 49 out of 70 that they're telling him, hey, you need to give the position back.
Exactly.
And they try telling him all sorts of different ways, telling him in code, telling him in
it got so awkward.
At one point I wondered if it was a different language they were speaking in literally, or if it was just bad reception because I didn't understand what they were saying.
Yeah.
Like literally, I think the director was trying to be polite about it.
Yeah.
And have him, do what they had agreed upon doing, or at least I'm assuming it was agreed upon.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't.
He just wouldn't.
And so it went from
awkward.
It went from 2.5, 3 seconds. And then the more that they started talking to him, the further out in front he got.
Yeah.
And
it's like the faster he was pushing.
He just kept going faster and faster. And I think he got it to 6.5 to 7 seconds, maybe.
I think it was about 5 to 6 seconds, but
yeah, it was over 6 seconds.
Really, was it?
Yeah.
It was interesting. Basically, they're telling him first, like you said, hey, we have to give this position back. And it's like, hey, hey, is your, mic check? Is your mic working? Yeah, it's working just fine. And then it's like, hey, you're actually going really fast on, turns 5, 6, 7, 8. You need to slow it down a little bit, conserve your tires. And so, it's code, right?
Yeah.
You got to take care of your tires. Got to take care of your tires. Take care of your tires. The guy probably said it like 4 times. And then at one point you can tell the engineer's getting a little desperate. He's like, remember what we talk about every Sunday.
Yeah.
It was so cringe. Like I was like kind of,
oh my gosh.
It felt gross.
Yeah.
And, to some degree, as a racing car driver, that's what he's supposed to do. Like,
yes.
And not knowing the full story.
This is one of the weird
not
things
seeing
about
the big
racing.
picture. Yeah,
it is. It's one of the weird things about racing, especially in Formula One. I mean, you'll see some of this like in cycling, in the pro cycling ranks. You'll see a little bit of this, but there's things that a team will decide behind the scenes, and you only know so much about what they're deciding, what they're saying. There's things that they may have decided in their contracts beforehand, like who's going to do this, who's going to do that. In these scenarios, this is what we're going to do as a team. Here's the agreement, But I know it was really, when you talk about cringy, like listening to it and watching it, I was watching with the F1 network, and David Coulthard's talking about his experience.
Yeah.
And he had an experience where there was the same type of thing where his team asked him to give up first place and let his teammate win. And he did. And he was saying how if he had to do it over again, he would not do that. He said that it changed the dynamics in the team. He didn't go into specifics about that, but he said he wouldn't do that. He would take the win every time.
Yeah.
He's always regretted that, basically, from what he was saying. And I think Lando, that's kind of that struggle as he's driving through those last laps. Like, what's going through his mind? It's got to be because all these guys are geared to win.
I can tell you what's going through his mind. Screw this guy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And like Coulthard said, like, yeah, you set the precedent, right? You did it once, and now it's like, oh, you're just kind of this pushover. Yeah. And I'm sure that's exactly what he's thinking. He's like, I'm going to make this as difficult as possible. And in the the post-race interviews, he more or less said like, oh, I was always going to give it. I was just, maybe I was going to wait till the last corner. And sure, maybe so, but
I would have loved to see that if he did.
Yeah.
Like slow down really, really slow and wait for.
Yeah, and I could almost see like you can almost read what he was thinking the whole time. He's thinking, well, let me show them, right? First, it's let me show them. And his engineer at some point came out and said, okay, we get the picture. We get what
point
you're
taken.
Point taken, right? We get what you're trying to do. We know you're fast, but that's not the point. The point is you need to give the position back. And aside from that, you can tell he's thinking like, well, maybe he's going to screw up. Maybe he's going to make a mistake, or maybe he'll get caught by whoever's behind him, Max or Hamilton, and then I can't give the position back, right? Like, so he's playing it smart by all means. Like, he's taking it as far as he can take it, possibly, and just acting like brand new. I was supposed to give it, like just not really accepting or receiving that message fully. But and you could tell he was putting his engineer in a tight spot, because he was. I think the guy was sweating. Like I could sense it. Yeah. It's just like at one point it was just so uncomfortable for him, and I think that's a really terrible thing for a racing car driver to do to his engineer at the same time, because you're putting him out to drive for the people that he responds to, right? Andrea Stella. Nobody wants Andrea Stella to say, go on the radio and tell you what to do. Like, that's not his job,
So, well, I know, but let's play this out a little differently.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so how it ends up playing out is he gives up the space. Piastri wins, right? He takes the lead in the last couple laps, wins the race.
Well, that's how it played out.
Yeah. Let's say that Norris decides, screw these guys, I'm going to win. And he does. Because there was no way Piastri was catching him. He couldn't catch him. Yeah. He was way behind. Yeah. So he wins the race. Then what? You think McLaren's not going to celebrate? Do you think that he's going to get fired from his team?
No.
Do you think that he's not going to be able to be in a good position the next week to win? Do you think, like, career-wise, are they going to take that one win away from him later? No.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, so there's like that side of it. And then you've got like what's going on behind closed doors that we don't know about.
Yeah.
But then also like from Norris's viewpoint, like he wins pole because he is the faster car.
Right.
And every week he's winning pole. He's the faster car every week, pretty much. But this race specifically, he was. And it wasn't, I mean, he was significant. It wasn't just barely, you know?
Yeah.
He has a little bit of a bad start, but he does hold off Verstappen by team orders.
Yeah.
He gets into the corner, and instead of really trying to fight through, which he probably could have, he avoids the accident, also team orders. And then he loses that first place, even though he goes into the corner first.
Yeah.
So Piastri, why didn't Piastri give that back then?
Yeah.
Like the cars were just as fast all through up until that last pit stop. Why didn't they ever come back and say, hey, Piastri, you need to give this back? So that's like, I mean, I didn't, when I'm watching the race, I'm not thinking that. When I'm watching the race, I'm thinking, man, why isn't this guy giving the space back here?
Yeah.
You know, he was in second. The only reason that he's in this is because his team jacked up the pit stops
Right.
and made a mess out of things.
Yeah.
He really didn't win this first place. I wouldn't want to win that way. So I'm thinking that as the race is going on.
Right.
But when I look back and I step back from it, that's some of the stuff that I'm thinking about is like, well, I mean, hey, this very first part, he's being the team player here. And he took one for the team, and the team didn't honor him back. And then when they do, when he's thinking, hey, they got my back now. I'm back in first because of this. And they're gonna pull him when his car is actually faster.
I don't agree. It's a good.
No,
it's
I'm just
good,
thinking.
It's
just
perspective.
thinking out
No,
loud.
you're right.
Yeah.
It is. That's a really interesting perspective. But when you're in a team setting, right, and you know the first couple laps are the most important to kind of dominate your team member, the other teams, whatever. Norris isn't delivering, whether or not he's the fastest car, right? So he was placed by the team in first place, you know, in error, really, because they shouldn't have given him the first pit stop to begin with. They could have given it to Piastri and been done with it. But they thought, okay, this is a team game. We're thinking broad, right? We're going to save ourselves from Hamilton or whoever's behind.
Right.
And, we'll fix it. And sure enough, they're like, hey, Norris pitted. You're going to get it. Don't worry. We're going to correct this. So they already know it's a little tricky, but they're thinking, okay, they're going to fix it. But if you're Norris, you got to be undeniable. Like you got to win it by merit and to be given it by your team because it's the same team, right? So they could have easily given it to Piastri. They did. They chose not to give it to Piastri first. So, I feel like the most honest thing to have done, and we mentioned this earlier, in an alternate universe, is he should have let him, just like Verstappen gave the position back to Norris earlier in the race. He should have given the position back to Piastri. Said, okay, I'm going to comply, and maybe even ask like how many seconds, what kind of gap do you want between us, and then we need to fight this out.
Yeah,
and make it a fair fight, clean. I think the team would have been okay with that, and it would have been better for both Norris and the team and Piastri. For Norris, because he's the one that's closest to Verstappen in the championship. So it does make sense for him to take it.
Yes.
Let's be real here.
Yeah, it
right?
does.
And just on a side note, juxtapose Norris and Verstappen. Would Verstappen have done that? Verstappen, let's go back to Brazil. You remember? Verstappen being like, having already clinched the championship, couldn't allow Perez through so that Perez could clinch second place.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the type of guy we're dealing with. And then you have Norris. Norris is like, well, why? This is a win. A win is a win. It makes sense, but he could have, he could have just fought him out on track, given him the position, and then said, okay, let me show you what I'm made of. And are we good to race?
Yeah.
But he didn't. He made it hard. And with a couple laps left to go, kind of shot yourself in the foot. There's no way. Even with those 2 or 3 laps, he probably still could have taken him. But he's like, you can't do that now. It's too late.
Yeah. That's what I would have liked to have seen. Is like, they come out of the pits like that. They tell them to overtake.
Yeah.
Okay, let them overtake.
Yeah.
And then allow them both to race each other
Exactly.
safely, but race each other and let the best person win. I think that benefits both drivers.
Yeah.
Because if Norris's car, which his car was faster, okay, great. But then you still got to pass the guy. So if you can pass him and Piastri can't defend him, then so be it. Then the person that wins the race is the best driver that day, because you got the 2 best cars riding at the front.
And with this current situation, what do? You dilute Piastri's first win.
That's right. Now,
I mean, let's think about it. I mean,
you create controversy over some guy's first win, and you make it to where it's like, well, he was given the win.
It's
kind of what happened.
It's like
they gave him
count,
the win.
Count it as a win. He was probably, odds are I would have given him a 70-30. He was probably going to win. Maybe.
I don't know.
I mean, they had
20 laps to go.
Maybe
if Norris gave it up right away,
but not in dirty air. Like if he had clean air, he might not have had that problem, and he wouldn't have been worried about Norris.
I mean, he was
catching Norris. He would have had a better outlap, but he didn't know until a little later. Like, okay, yeah, you're going to be taken care of. I don't know. I think they dilute the win. They cause issue for themselves in the media, obviously, like us talking about them, and it's a little sloppy.
I think McLaren put on a masterclass today in how to ruin a race win.
Yeah. Oh, it's like they're taking a page out of Ferrari almost, but except they're winning.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's like, Ferrari does this and they lose.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
With like plan F. And then these guys just like shoot themselves in the foot for no reason and still win. It's like, but it's okay because we won. Okay.
Yeah.
But both the drivers aren't happy. Sure, Piastri's happy. He's like, oh, it's a maiden win. It's the best. But like, he can't celebrate that.
Yeah.
And Norris, you made yourself look silly for no reason. You know, like, did you prove a point? If you were going to prove a point, prove it. Like, you should taking the win.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unnecessary.
It's a rough position to be in. And honestly, like when I first watched it and thought about it, I was like, man, he's acting like a little spoiled rich kid.
Yeah. Well, he probably is.
I don't know that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that was like at first, and then I was like, let's just take a step back and listen to what he has to say. And then let's take a step further back and see if there's any other info out there about it. And so I kind of tempered that a little bit, but he calmed down some, and I'm sure he'll calm down a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, these guys are geared to win. They're not geared to come in second place. Yeah. I don't care if it's a team or not. I mean, unless it's like clear cut in their contract and decided upon way before. Hey, Norris, we know you got pole position, but if Piastri gets in front, we're going to let him win today. Or if you get in front.
I really don't think that was.
I don't think that's how that went.
I don't think that's how it went.
No.
Because at some point he asked, "Are we? Like, hey." They actually told him you're free to fight with the papaya. Like you're free to race.
Yeah.
And he couldn't do it. So, sure. There's going to be stints where one car's faster than the other, or one car functions well, or one driver functions well better on the hards than the mediums, etc. And we probably would have seen something better had he just like given it and then said, okay, all right, I can't look at, I have pace, right? I'm going to have to take him on. Take him on, on track.
Right.
This is silly, but
yeah.
The only positive was that oh my gosh, at the same time, we had Lewis and Verstappen.
Oh, it was great.
Oh, gosh, you know, there's nothing.
That was great.
There's nothing better than a Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen fight on track because it's always, it never ends well. Like,
Yeah, that's right.
it's always a thing where they're gonna crash, and of course you don't want to see
Something's
that.
gonna happen.
Something's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Because Max does. I mean, I don't know what it is, but he does not drive against Lewis as like anyone else. He's ultra aggressive with him, and actually, the first stint where you're going to get past him, he was fairly level-headed about it the whole way. Like he was frustrated, but I think he was frustrated with the car.
Yeah.
And then going on to the second stint, he was obviously going a lot faster, but man, he just couldn't do it.
He was frustrated because he got undercut going in the second stint. And then also like, because he was having to overtake other cars in between, you know, even if it was just cars, you know, that he was lapping.
And they were a little faster on better tires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was slowing him down and just to work back up to where he could compete against Hamilton.
To kind of interrupt there, he was at some point, he was like, hey, don't, you know, to GP, he's like, don't give me this BS. You guys gave me the effing strategy.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to rescue what's left. So basically he's like, hey, you guys are clowning this up, so I have to take care of it. Leave me alone. Let me do this, because at one point when they gave him his new tires, obviously he's having a struggle. He's struggling, and he's just tearing his tires apart in that outlap, just like going crazy. And anyway,
it's really interesting.
It was
Verstappen on the radio. Today.
he was not having it one bit. And you know, at some point GP was like, hey, you know, having, you know, kind of doing this is childish, or like having all these radio messages are childish. Like, not saying he was childish, but like, hey, just having these sorts of conversations, maybe within this team and other teams, like, hey, this is like kind of childish. Let's not do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were at each other's throats there. It was quite intense. And, you know, I think there has to be respect there. But I just think it's a different type of respect when you're dealing with Max. Like, you kind of have to give what you take sort of thing with him, because he's just some, you know,
he'll run
like,
all over.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, he's, you know, I mean, look at his dad.
He's
like, look at what he's
yeah. I mean, seriously,
it all, you know, apple doesn't fall far. But as far as like his little shunt with Lewis, that was strange in my eyes. I don't know about you.
Yeah, so he's trying to pass Lewis. He's pushing, and I think he's frustrated. He's frustrated his car is not working well. He's frustrated he got undercut. He's frustrated, you know, at his team. And I think he's a competitor, and he's so used to winning. Yeah. He's frustrated he may not make the podium. Yeah. And he can tell his car isn't good enough. Like, he's really trying to drive the wheels off of it. And so he's having trouble passing Hamilton again. Yeah. And this track, it's like there's a couple of turns you can pass in, and then after that you got to wait. Yeah. And then so if you don't play everything just right all the way around, then when you get back to that DRS zone, you may be out of DRS zone. Right. So I think he goes in and he's trying really hard to get around Hamilton, and he thinks that he kind of does, and it's more like desperation.
It was a lunge for sure.
Yeah, it was a lunge, and he goes in, and Hamilton's
locks up.
Yeah, he locks up on his tires. Hamilton's, you know, keeping the same line. His front wheel hits Verstappen's rear wheel.
Launches
him way up in the air.
I'm surprised he kept going after that. That car was at least 5-6 feet in the air from one, you know, I feel for these drivers, because they're like laying down on those cars, and that car its rear went up like, it was a lot, a couple feet.
Yeah.
At
easily.
Least. Easy 4 or 5 feet. And then slammed down and kept going. So like, it says something to how like well they're made, but Gosh, that was a little violent.
And he went right off the track, but he was able to come back.
Yeah, he came back,
but it was too late in the race at that point for him to do anything else.
Yeah.
So then at that
I'm sure
point,
he had some damage on his floor or something.
I'm
because,
sure he had to have.
Yeah.
Had to have had some damage there. But he gets back. He gets back behind Leclerc. And
just kind of stays there.
And that's where he stays for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it was only a few more laps, but
yeah.
But
good
Hamilton
for
solidifies third at that point. Because of that turn right there. Leclerc wasn't anywhere close to threatening him. And so Hamilton comes in, gets
third.
a podium.
How many?
It's 200th of his career.
Nice.
Yes. Lewis
awesome.
Hamilton.
That's great.
He's back.
I think he's back.
I wasn't expecting their car to do well this week because of the heat, but I thought he may have a chance because their car does really well in these type of curves and everything. But yeah, he drove really well.
Yeah.
And Russell actually performed really well too. He had bad qualifying.
He was right there with Perez. They both had a really good race, all things considered.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the Mercedes looks really good. I think we've got a definite 3-car race.
Yeah.
Somewhat 4.
It's like
Ferraris.
2.5 and then Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not.
It's
sure,
like
I'm not
McLaren's
convinced.
kind of taking over the first place.
Yeah,
and then you've got Verstappen right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you saying the half is half of RB, or are you
no?
saying
I'm not saying that.
You're saying Ferrari's halfway there.
I'm saying Ferrari's halfway there. It's definitely McLaren, Red Bull, or at least one of them, but for sure Red Bull's there, right? And then Ferrari is just kind of like on its
but we got to
one step back.
We got to include Mercedes.
Oh,
right?
Mercedes, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So is it 3.5? Then?
3.5.
3.5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mercedes is coming up in the Constructors Championship.
Yeah. No, it's good for them.
Yeah.
And good for Lewis. I like seeing him up there and doing what he does best.
It's good for racing too. I think it's good for the sport to have someone of his caliber and pedigree that's or championship winning ways.
Yeah.
I.e. pedigree up there.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. What about what are you thinking about for next race? Spa.
It's gonna be wild.
Spa,
I mean, this
Spa's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
It's super high speed.
It's kind of cool looking from above too.
It really is. Yeah.
It looks like a little
elevation. Yeah.
But it has all the elevation. You've got all the trees. Yeah. It's also cool because you may have like totally different weather conditions at one end of the track versus the other.
That's right.
It's a super long track. You could have rain at one end and dry on the other. But this is also the one where you've got that it's had a history of accidents.
Yeah, lots of
bad accidents.
Lots of
thinking
deaths,
Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
This is where he had his accident.
Yeah, no, there's been a few.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this is where cars go airborne and become airplanes. Yeah, that's not unusual there. And there's lots of like corners where they're just blind.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good race. One of my favorites, probably one of my favorites on the whole calendar. So I'm excited for next week.
Yeah.
Is it next week?
Yeah, it's next weekend.
It's next week. Yeah.
Next weekend, and then we go to the summer break.
And we'll see who comes back and who doesn't.
Right. Yeah, no
Perez.
kidding.
Gosh.
Oh my gosh. I think he's
We'll see. We'll see
back.
if he has a good race next week. We'll see.
I think he had a good race this week.
He had a good race.
Bad quali, good race.
Yeah, right. And we were talking about this earlier. Like, I'm happy that he was in 7th, coming out of like 16th instead of in 7th, having started 7th.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
true. Yeah.
Hey,
what could have been if he had started 7th?
Yeah, could have been worse. Like, it's not a good showing if he's ending. Verstappen's kind of battling for first or second, or should I say second or third, and Perez is chilling in 6th, 7th, and 8th. Like, that's not good, obviously.
Yeah,
but Spa's going to be a good one. Do you have who's on your list?
Man, I mean, I think that we're going to continue to see McLaren at the front. I don't see. I mean, I see Norris and Norris, Piastri being up there. I don't know if Piastri will. I think Verstappen will be back, and I think Hamilton. I think those three: Norris, Verstappen, and Hamilton in that order.
It's going to be interesting because it's going to suit fast cars, right? So I'm going to give it to I'm going to go Norris, Verstappen, Hamilton. I want to say
We're gonna pick the
Piastri.
same?
I was going to is that Well,
great minds think alike here on Pushbox
it's not
Banter.
it's not that I wasn't listening to you. But I wanted to say
Yeah.
Piastri, but I feel like he's not as, his inexperience is probably going to show, and mistakes happen in that circuit, so we never know.
Piastri's not as consistent
Yeah,
so far. Like
exactly.
he has good races and he does well, and some of his consistency is, he'll be consistent the whole race. Sometimes it's part of the race.
Right.
Sometimes it's he has a bad quali. He's not as consistent. Like Norris, Verstappen, they're going to deliver.
Yeah.
Hamilton, he was a little questionable and got me a little worried in qualifying this past weekend. But he was able to make Q3. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know if they're not up there. Gosh, I don't know. Wouldn't surprise me if Leclerc. No, Russell maybe. I don't think Ferrari's going to be up there.
I don't think Ferrari's going to be up there either.
They might surprise me.
I think Ferrari's going to be 4th, 5th, or 6th.
Yeah.
After I would like to see Perez up there, but it's like he needs a redemption story right away.
That'd be pretty awesome if he was.
Yeah. If he was in the podium again, maybe it's okay. Well, let's see after the break. But I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Yuki's in the car and Sergio's in the V carb or something.
Perez,
you never know.
He's not going to go to V carb.
I don't think it. I don't know.
No.
You don't think so?
No.
Does he just get kicked out?
I think if he's not with Red Bull, that he goes to another team. I think
so late in the game because we don't have. I mean, what Audi, Williams. Audi would be the only common sense one because
Mercedes.
Audi is I could say maybe Mercedes.
Yeah. I mean,
that's Audi or Mercedes.
He's an excellent driver.
Yeah.
And it's not that. I mean, there's people that over the past few races are comparing him to Sargent and Sargent out qualifying.
Oh no, yeah, that's I mean, that's not a very good.
Narrow, these stats just make up this post, so I'm gonna post it.
Right.
It's not like looking at the whole picture there, but yeah.
What did you say today? It was 180th or?
Oh yeah,
180th
Perez,
top
he had
10.
His 180th top 10 finish.
There you go, in the points.
I mean, that's
180 times. That's great.
180 times. Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, how many other teams out there would love to have that?
Yeah.
Because he's going to deliver most of the time. He does. I mean, he's in 7th place in the, I think 7th. Yeah, Hamilton passed him today in the Constructors Championship.
That's so good.
Yeah. So, but I mean, he's still up there.
Yeah.
It's tight. It's tight this year. So,
well, we'll see.
Yes.
Well, I look forward to Spa, and we'll probably talk again.
Yes,
next
definitely.
week.
Yes. Sounds good, man.
All right, guys. So you know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment, something good on your preferred platform.
Yes.
And I think that's it for this week.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you, Daniel.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.